Welcome to Oklahoma Gardening. On today's program, host Casey Hentges visits with a pair of master gardeners in Tulsa, Oklahoma to take a look at the unique keyhole gardens that they have created. We plant a new tree in the Botanic Garden, and there is one more stop in southeastern Oklahoma to look at the beautiful fall foliage. Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance is provided by TLC, Oklahoma's leading garden center, Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, Tulsa's source for great gardens, southwoodgardencenter.com. and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing.
If you remember, last spring we built a traditional keyhole garden at the Studio Gardens at OSU, and today joining us is Jim Long, a Tulsa master gardener. And Jim, you have your own version of a keyhole garden here. Can you tell us about the construction of this?
It's wood, because stones are very expensive.
But it's not just regular wood, right? You actually recycled this.
It's old privacy fence.
Okay.
Takes about 3 panels to make one. We chose the wood because it was cheaper, easier to work with, and we wanted to raise the height up to accomplish what we want to do.
And what is it you're trying to accomplish?
The traditional keyhole gardens are shorter. So we're trying, the plan was to get something that would help people with physical limitations. This is stand-up gardening. You're right here.
Right.
It also produces vegetables all summer long. Since we have a shorter growing season, instead of it sitting idle in the wintertime, we're going to produce a second product of compost once a year. Okay,
so you actually have just cleaned out this garden from this summer.
Last week we cleaned it out from last year's growth.
Okay, so what do we do to get our keyhole garden, your keyhole garden, ready for this winter?
Okay, we start with the empty garden. We add about 5 inches of sticks in the bottom, nothing bigger than a broom handle, nothing longer than a foot. About 5 inches deep near the basket, tapering down.
Okay.
Then we cover that with 1.5 inches of wet cardboard in small pieces. Then we add the compost material
over there. And that's kitchen scraps and things like that.
Right. This is just so you can see the 3 layers. So this layer will come on around, that will come around. Then we continue to fill all fall and winter.
Okay.
Fall leaves, lawn clippings, garden scraps, kitchen vegetable scraps.
Your hanging baskets, I like that you said that.
When that hanging basket's done, you just throw the whole thing in.
Okay.
You stir it occasionally. You want to be up to here by March.
Okay.
And you're going to fill, it's going to settle. Fill and settle. It's going to be that way all winter long.
And now you have a special lining here too that's protecting the outside wood.
Without the liner, the compost would compost the compost bin. So we put this liner in here. This is 4 mil visqueen, 2 layers on each side of a piece of cardboard. This is
just cardboard wrapped in
It's just cardboard with visqueen on both sides.
Okay.
When you get up to here, preferably by March, then we add about 8 inches of something light. I use potting mix. I don't want something heavy that's going to press down.
Okay.
So we use a potting mix, and then we grow vegetables on that.
And so in our keyhole garden, we use traditional soil.
Traditional soil,
but to keep yours lighter, you're using potting soil.
Because I'm going to take it out later. You grow all summer long. Then in the fall, we skim off this potting soil and save it. Because you're going to use it again.
Okay.
Then we harvest the compost out of the bottom, we sift it, and that's their second product that makes it more worthwhile.
So now all season long you're growing plants in here.
Right.
And can you tell us what these hoops are for?
These can protect the plants in the early spring.
Okay.
If you get a late frost, you put a cover over this, You can even hang a light bulb in here and turn it into a greenhouse. It can protect it from a heavy rain. You can also use it to hold a bug screen.
Okay.
Or in August when it's blazing hot, you can put a sunscreen over it.
Oh, okay. And you actually used it to grow some Malabar spinach on it,
Malabar
correct?
spinach all over this.
And that's one of your favorite crops to grow?
I use it as a filler crop to fill this.
Okay.
Because it can grow up to 1 foot a day.
And the vegetation has a lot of moisture in it,
A lot of
too.
moisture, a lot of greens in it.
So every time you're layering, do you add water to it? What's your process with that?
I try to layer in a mixture of greens and browns together.
Okay.
Mix them together, then put it in. And then every time you add something, you water it. Every time you put kitchen scraps or coffee filters or whatever in the center basket, you water through there too.
So during the summertime, when this is full of plants, you'll continue to put your
water through
compost
there.
in the
You
center.
can put more material in here. The water will go down, wick underneath, and feed your plants from the bottom.
Okay. And now you have a unique little door on this keyhole garden. You can explain that to us?
We put that in so that if you needed some compost in the middle of the summer, you could open that door and pull some out to use it for a pot or anything else. You can also pull some out to put back in the top to maybe reboot. Maybe you have too much brown in there. It's not composting right. You can pull some of the soil from the bottom and put in the top to get the process going again.
Right, okay. And now what is this tool is what you use to
stir this.
To turn it.
You have to turn that occasionally. But because it's only 16 inches, you can't be working a fork down in there.
Right.
So we use this, and you plunge it down in there. These will fold up. When you get it down in there, you kind of twist it a little bit and then pull back up. And do this 6 or 8 times is all it takes.
And so it just turns
to break that all up so that the water can go on down through.
Okay. Well, can you show us what it is you've harvested out of this garden?
We had a good year this year. We had a good fill in the spring.
So how much compost did you get?
We actually produced 32 cubic feet.
Wow.
This is good prime stuff. It'll make into a ball.
Yeah. This is beautiful.
I did a little work on, I checked on the computer for any reference to sifted compost. And sifted compost sells for about $12 a cubic foot. If you buy a pallet, you get a cut rate.
Wow. So when you take it out of the garden, does it look like this?
It looks like this.
You mentioned sifting it.
I run it through a box with 1/2-inch hardware cloth on the bottom, and everything that comes out goes through this sifter into the wheelbarrow, and then it comes over and goes into storage.
Okay. So what are you going to do with all of this compost that you have?
Part of it will go back.
Okay.
The potting mix that I grew in, I've stored it over the winter. It's in tubs. When I go to put it back on in March, I'll take 2 parts of that and mix with 1 part of this.
So you're kind of rejuvenating that potting soil a little bit.
And then I will put that in layers. You usually put it in short layers as it settles. And then as it settles, you put more on. Now the garden will settle all summer long as that compost underneath breaks down. This last year, that garden, from the time I filled it until the season was over, I think it settled about 7 inches.
And that's a good thing because
That's a
that
good
means
thing.
it's decomposing.
That means there was more underneath.
Doesn't make it into the compost.
Most of the material will go through. There is some that doesn't break down.
Okay.
And what doesn't break down is not wasted. We put it back in. As we're adding lawn clippings or leaves, we can put a layer of that in. We can put some of this on, and eventually it will totally break down. So almost you get 100% breakdown. Maybe not the first year, but eventually you'll get 100% breakdown.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff is pretty soft, and you can tell it is decomposing.
And some of the mulch will be half decomposed where you can actually break it apart in your hands.
So not only are you getting a spring and summer crop out of this keyhole garden, you're also getting a byproduct in the winter time.
Yes.
Very nice. So this is a great way to utilize a keyhole garden in a completely different way than what we presented this spring.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing this with us. Joining joining us next is Steve Wood, who is also a Tulsa Master Gardener, and your main interest is composting.
Absolutely.
So obviously you worked with Jim Long on this keyhole garden, which is a fun take on a keyhole garden. Can you tell us how this came about?
Cup of coffee. Jim and I were trying to come up with ideas that would spark interest in gardening with children. And we wanted it to be really different. And we tried the thought of maybe tires cut and stacked and make a compost garden that way. But Jim actually came up with this particular idea because he talked with another master gardener, and we stole the idea from her.
So sharing ideas amongst
It's
master
constant,
gardeners,
yes.
right? So you obviously have a Lego garden,
That is
keyhole
the theme.
garden here, and we've got these, and this is made out of concrete, or
Yeah, it's a mixture that, again, Jim came up with to put in there to make it look like caps for a Lego.
very nice, very nice. And our man here, what's the
Love
role
the man.
What's the role he's serving?
He is a master
Master
gardener.
gardener. We got the T-shirt
Yes,
on there.
and he is also a Lego man. He can carry more than one hat.
Very nice. And what's underneath him? Is that where our keyhole composting?
That underneath him is where the keyhole starts. There's a basket that he sets over,
Okay.
and we can remove him and fill it up or take it out as whatever we need to do.
Very nice. So it allows that rainfall to go off onto the garden and not
Yes, not in-
necessarily onto the compost.
Don't oversoak.
Very good. So we're here at Global Gardens at Eugene Field Elementary.
Isn't this a neat place?
It's beautiful here, and can you tell us why you chose this place to do this, and what does it mean to the kids to have this here?
Well, the kids that work this garden, I did a tour. They do a tour ever so often, and they talk about their garden. And when I mean their garden, I'm talking about a particular raised bed or a stone area, and they can tell you why they garden. And I've never heard an adult explain it the way they do, and the pride that they have. And then they explain what they've learned in gardening. And it's like, when you talk to an adult, you give them an idea, you might get one or two aha moments. With a child, it's like a machine gun of aha moments.
So are they learning about composting through this process?
In fact, there are some that can explain it to you in detail. They like to give a tour of the compost, and they'll tell you it needs 4 ingredients, and you have to mix the green and the brown this way, and then add the water and of course turn it to get your air. They are so full of pride of what they do. It's wonderful, and it's contagious.
Very nice. And you've had this at the Home and Garden Show before on display, but it is in its permanent location now, right? Because it's heavy.
At 1,600 plus pounds, plus it's got a footing. We don't move this one.
Okay, all right.
But I tell you, it's an eye catcher, and the kids like to talk about it. So,
Well, it's in a good home, and we appreciate you sharing it with us. And I think it's unique because this is just a person's take on how to do a keyhole garden, and it's another unique idea. Was it hot this summer and you realized that you needed to plant a shade tree in your yard? A lot of people ask us, when can I plant a tree? And someone once told me that you can plant a tree anytime there is an R in that month. So you think about it. January, February, March, April, not May, not June, not July or August, but September, October, November, and December. So that gives you kind of an idea, and it's an easy trick to remember when you can plant trees. Now, typically we don't plant trees, say mid-December through mid-February, just because it's so cold and the ground might be frozen. So that really limits us to spring and fall. Now, within those, there are some trees that you may not want to plant at certain times. A lot of times you don't want to plant your evergreen trees in the fall because they can dry out in the wintertime. Really, fall is the best time to plant your deciduous trees, and then spring is the best time to plant your evergreen trees or your bare root trees. Here we're going to plant a black gum tree, and we chose this tree because it is a deciduous shade tree that we want to plant in this area. We previously had a ginkgo biloba, and we think that it might have gotten too much moisture in this area. So we're going to plant this a little bit high, but also black gums or tupelo trees do like a little bit more moisture. We're going to dig our hole twice as wide as what the root ball is, and that's so that we're really breaking up that surrounding soil to encourage those roots to get out into that environment. The other thing is, if you have heavy clay soils, you want to deglaze it basically by breaking up that clay just with the edge of your shovel. Again, that will allow those roots to get out there. If you don't, you can create a teacup effect where the roots actually just stay right there in the hole that you've dug. It also used to be suggested to amend the soil, but you really don't want to do that anymore. The rules have changed a little bit, and they found that it's better to backfill with the native soil that you've excavated. That's because if you make this too perfect of an environment, the roots are never going to branch out and go into the native soil. So again, we've got our excavated soil over here that we will backfill. And of course, before you do any digging, you want to make sure that you've called Okie to mark any lines that might be buried in your soil, as well as you want to protect any of your own irrigation lines. Now that we have our hole and it appears to be large enough for our root ball, we're going to measure it. And a good way to do that is to take your shovel and lean it up against the handle, up against the root ball, and kind of mark it with your finger, and then take that into the hole so you can easily measure the depth of your root ball and measure how big your hole is and whether it's appropriately sized or not. If it's too shallow, you'll want to dig a little bit deeper, but it's really best to dig a more shallow hole because you can always dig a little bit more rather than to dig too deep and have to backfill. Because as that soil compacts, that backfilled soil underneath the root ball compacts, your tree will actually sink down a lot. And a lot of times we'll lose trees because there's too much moisture and they're planted too low. So it's best to plant a tree higher than it is to plant it too low. Now that we know our hole is large enough, we're going to go ahead and start to take our tree out of our pot. And this is rather a larger tree to try to plant by yourself, but it can be hard to get it out of the pot. One of the best ways is to kind of roll it, gently roll it, and put your knee into it. And that will separate the tree from the pot. Now if I can get some help pulling the pot, the tree should come out fairly easy. There we go. And we're just going to lift this into our hole now. So now that we have our tree in place, this is our opportunity to look at the roots. If there's any small roots that might be circling, you want to make sure to cut these. This root looks like it's good, it's going outwards. Also, the roots don't look too much like they've been circling in the pot for too long, so they really look good. But if you do see that, and it doesn't hurt to go ahead and score the roots a little bit anyway, just take a kitchen knife or an X-Acto knife and kind of cut those vertically around the tree. It's basically like root pruning and what you would do on a herbaceous plant as well. Now, the other thing that you want to think about is the orientation of your tree. You might look at which side of the tree looks the best, because now's the opportunity to be able to rotate your tree and shift it so that the best side is facing the direction you want it to. Once we have the tree oriented and facing the right direction, we also want to ensure that it is straight up and not slanted. And now we're ready to backfill. A lot of times when you buy a tree from the nursery, it'll come with a stake attached to it, and really this is just for nursery purposes. At this point, we're going to remove this stake and go ahead and put in a couple of T-posts to provide it with more support. And a lot of times people make the mistake of putting the wires too tight, the guy wires too tight around the tree, and you don't want to do this. This is simply just to help assist the tree in heavy winds, but you want the tree to flex a little bit in those winds and the light breezes. I always think of trees as like having abs. So if you don't work your muscles, then as soon as you take these wires off, that tree is going to snap in the slightest wind. This way it will actually build up caliper and make it stronger, as well as the roots stronger to anchor that tree. We have our stakes in, and now we're going to put our guide wires to the tree. And a lot of times people will use wire or hose around that wire along the tree, but we prefer these flat straps. It just is a little bit smoother on the bark of the tree. We're going to wrap this around the interior of the tree. We're going to try to find an area where there's not too many branches. And we're going to tie this with some twine. Again, we use twine instead of wire because it doesn't wear on the tree quite as much. We're just going to tie a knot in that. So once we have that, we're going to pull it tight and then just tie it around our stake here. I need to cut that. Once we've cut that, we're going to tie it around our stake to secure it. The last thing that we're going to do now is add mulch. And you can see when we backfilled our tree, we didn't put any topsoil on top of the root ball. And that's because we don't want to bury the root ball. We want to make sure that existing root flare is still present. If we were to bury this, that will lead to disease and rot and decay, and that's not a good thing. We've also created a tree well with the backfill soil. And this will create a reservoir, so when we water, it will actually allow that water to percolate down into the root ball. And we're going to mimic this contour a little bit with our mulch. We want to put about 2 to 3 inches of mulch, but we're going to taper that down as we get closer to that root, the trunk. You can see we've recreated that tree well and ensured that there's no mulch up against the bark of the tree. And so now we're just going to water it in. As we water this in, we want to provide about 1 inch of water on a new tree about every week to 10 days. And you'll do this until the tree goes dormant. In the winter time, if we have had a month-long spell without any precipitation, either rain or snow, then we're going to want to give it a drink too. But it doesn't require much water because it's not actively growing with leaves and everything. We won't worry about fertilizing it until late winter, early spring when it's flushing out, and soon we're going to have shade in the summertime. As our season comes to an end and the temperatures start getting cooler, we thought it would be a great time to come back and visit southeastern Oklahoma and one of the popular destinations this time of year. That's right, we're on the Talamina Scenic Drive. It's also known as Oklahoma's Highway 1 that stretches through the Ouachita National Forest from Talahena, Oklahoma to Mena, Arkansas. Thus the name Talamina Drive. And a scenic drive it is. Of course, the fall foliage is what brought us here today. Now, like trees and like people, we all react differently to environmental conditions, and so sometimes the environment also plays into that. That's why you might hear from one year to another that there's better fall color than other years. Typically, dry soil is good for fall color. Now, unfortunately, southeastern Oklahoma has been experiencing a little bit more than just dry soils, and they're going through a little bit of a drought. And this can reduce the quality of the fall foliage that we see. Other factors that play into it is if we've had unusually warm spells late in the season or continuously cold, rainy days, this can also kind of reduce the quality of fall foliage that we see. Ideally, for the best fall foliage, we want bright sunny days, followed by cool nights. If you're looking for fall foliage and you want to add it a little bit closer to home by putting some in your yard, I would suggest you go visit a nursery now. It's a great time to not only plant a tree, but you're going to see exactly what fall foliage you'll be getting. A lot of times certain genus species of trees, they will be a particular color, either red or yellow, but some trees, such as the Chinese pistache, can come in an array of colors because of seed variation. The only way to truly know what your tree will do and look like in the fall is by purchasing that color of fall foliage. So whether it's out in nature or in your backyard, get out and enjoy the fall color.
There are lots of great horticultural events this time of year. Be sure and consider these activities when you're making your plans for the weeks ahead. Next week on Oklahoma Gardening, we clean out our water garden and get it ready for a winter nap. At the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food and Forestry, there are sweet potatoes and peanuts to dig. And Barbara Brown makes a savory stew from our harvest. Join us then for more TV You'll Grow to Love. To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussions on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows, as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater jewel. We wish to thank our generous underwriters, TLC Garden Centers, Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food and Forestry. Additional support is provided by Pond Pro Shops, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, and the Oklahoma Horticultural Society. We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.